Welcome back. I'll just wait a moment to make sure everyone is out of the waiting room here. And then I will also look to Ms. Cott. Are you ready for us to pick up again?
Yeah, give me one moment. I'm just still getting my other computer out.
No problem. Just let me know.
Yeah, let's see. Okay, I'm all set. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. All right, welcome back. It is 1:23 in the afternoon of August 28th, and we are picking up for our afternoon portion of the day with respect to the water rights hearing on the application and associated petitions and requests for release from priority with respect to the proposed Sites Reservoir project. We ended before lunch with cross-examination of panel 2. We didn't finish cross-examination, but we were partway through cross-examination of panel 2. We had finished hearing from the coordinating NGO parties, and I believe I was going to pick up with Mr. Reese. Before I do that, I did want to address some of the outstanding procedural issues we have. One is the time limits. And as I've indicated, I'm going to make this an oral ruling. It will be memorialized in writing. I have some other written procedural rulings that I owe you. So I will include this in there so that we have a written record in addition to the transcript. My intent is to keep my ruling on the time limits is that the site's authority will stay at 40 hours with the understanding that because I am going to allow the protestants in total more time, if there is a need for additional time for redirect, because there's more time for cross from the protestants, I understand that. And that would be a basis for you to come back if we need to and indicate to me I need more time for redirect on these subjects, something like that. The coordinating NGOs, I'm going to put you at a commensurate with sites 40 hours. I think that's almost what you asked for because I am going to break out the other parties. And the same is true with respect to redirect. If that becomes an issue, we can talk about it. SDWA, I know you asked for 13. You have been quite concise. I wrote down 10, so I'm going to put the time limit at 10, but if so far your cross, at least yesterday, was very efficient. So I don't know that you're even going to run up against 10, but maybe you are. But feel free again to come back and ask if you need additional time and just explain the basis for that. Mr. King and Mr. Ornbaum, are they both on the line? I don't know if my team can unpin. I'm having trouble seeing the room because
I'm here. Ben
okay,
King's
Mr.
here.
King is there. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Ornbaum, are you on as well? Is Mr. Ornbaum here?
He is.
Great. I just wanted to make sure you heard what I was going to say. I'm going to impose limits for each of you of 4 hours. I know you asked for 8, Mr. King, but my intent is to have both of you equal time of 4 hours, but you can share your time if you'd like. So I think because Mr. Ornbaum is cross-examining second, that has some inherent time savings because Mr. King, you may have already asked the question and then he doesn't need to. So I leave it to you to coordinate between the two of you if you would like to share time. Otherwise it's 4 and 4. And again, as with respect to all the other parties, as I mentioned, if we run up against these limits, I will be looking for good cause, but I do have the flexibility to allow additional time if it's productive.
How much time have I used up already?
You will need to look at the spreadsheet that has been posted. Mr. Anderson, are you there? Can you state again where we posted the time limit spreadsheet?
The time limit spreadsheet is in the hearing documents folder. It's located outside of all of the other subfolders.
And is it an Excel spreadsheet?
It is, and I believe Mr. King is at 95 minutes.
Great. Thank you. And then the remaining parties, I believe that's DWR, state water contractors, and the Bureau are still at 6 hours. That did not change. Are there any questions with respect to that ruling? All right, the next thing I'd like to do is talk a little bit more about the site visit. I'm not sure I'm ready to make a decision, but let's talk a little bit about it. So I received the updated version, and I appreciate we were all working on very short periods of time when I sprang this on you yesterday. I wanted to follow up. First of all, I think I was not clear yesterday when I said the days are long. Can we break them down? I did not say quite explicitly 8 a.m. in Red Bluff is a really early day. Do you think, I guess I'll look first to the authority, but do you think there's a way for us to break this down? It seems like if we're going to use 3 days to accomplish what we were going to do in 2, that I don't mind getting up at 4 a.m., but if I don't have to, and if there's a better way to do this, I'd prefer to go do it that way. One possibility is to do stops. It seemed to me is to do the stops 1, 2, and 3 on their own day. But I don't know if there's, following stops on our way back in the afternoon that would just, they're there. It makes sense. So I'm looking to the authority first. Do you have any thoughts on this issue?
I need to recall what stop 3 was. Stop 1 was TCCA. Stop 2 was GCID.
Stop 2 was actually a rest break because.
Oh, that's right. Okay,
and then stop 3 was GCID.
Well, I mean, we can certainly do those on other days. The goal was to a number of folks had expressed interest in trying to put this into 2 days because they were traveling from a distance and didn't necessarily want to have to come back again. They thought while they're in town, they may as well make them long days, try to cover all the stops. And so that's kind of why it's structured the way it's structured. But there's no reason you couldn't do the diversions on a separate day. I mean, we would suggest though that you look at the diversions and the other sites and sites related facilities on the first 2 proposed days, because I'm still not certain with respect to the 3 sites Mr. King has proposed that there's clear right of access. I know he provided a bit of an update to me last night on his conversations with DWR, but I think we'd want those pieces firmed up.
So I can respond to that.
Well, let's wait, Mr. King. I want to hear the rest from Mr. Ferguson, and then I'll
before we commit to those sites. And so what we know now is that we can obtain access to all the sites other than those Mr. King has proposed. So we thought it'd be most efficient to get those done on the first 2 days. And if site access could be obtained and confirmed, then we come back to those other sites in October.
Understood. Mr. King.
Yes, so I think I'll go into the access issues, but one major consideration is that Chairman Mitchum and several other of his members of the Katchadee tribe are attending day two right now in the morning at the site cemetery. And they requested also to speak at the Davis Weir, which is which actually is on land that they own, subject to the DWR right away, and it also gives a site of the land that they may have Federal Reserve rights on. So if we break up those days, you're going to ask the tribe to actually reschedule, and I think from a tribal engagement, the governor's executive orders, I think it'd be not. We'd have to find justification for that accommodation, and I apologize when I suggested to be more helpful yesterday, but I forgot about that. The other part is that site 4 is on my property, and so I have complete access to that. The issue is that if we get in October, we can have rain, and I can no longer provide access because we will go to our riparian site next to the drain and Sturt roads, which are very accessible in September, but maybe not in October. So regarding the access, I spoke several times. Well, I've had conversations previously with Joel Farias, who's a DWR, And then I sent him some emails and left some voice messages because he didn't call me back, but he actually called me back yesterday during the hearing and said I absolutely, the landowners absolutely have rights to the levee next on the land, and we actually own land on both sides, Coosa Basin Drain south of Grimes Arbuckle Road, and Katsodehe owns the land next to Davis Weir. So sites 3 and 4 are allowed under the DWR's interpretation, and I've shared that contact with Joel Farias with Ali and Mr. Ferguson. The only other last remaining issue is access to Balsam Dam, which would be a straight drive from the Han Road, Grimes Arbuckle Road south to Thule Road, and that just needs a liaison with the RD 108, which I believe the authority should be able to reasonably obtain to allow us out on that gate and be efficient travel.
So bottom line, Mr. King, are you telling me that other than the drive to Ballston Weir, you have permission to access these stops?
Yes. Yes, I'm assuming that Katsodehe would, since that they would agree to provide their incidental access because they're going to be on site making a statement at the Davis Weir. I haven't confirmed that specifically, but I'm assuming that they would. But I definitely have access south of the Grimes Arbuckle Han Road crossing on the Coosa Basin Drain.
Okay. So my understanding is that you are, which is fine. I asked on the fly yesterday, but that you are now proposing that we should stick with the initial 2 days on September 9th and 10th.
Well, no, I'm proposing that actually from efficiency point of view, that we drop the last 7, 8, 3, 4, 6, 7, and 8 for day 2, which starts in Dunnigan and finishes at the Knights Landing cut, I believe. That actually is pretty efficient because then we just work north to south for the first 2 days, and the last 3 stops would be actually in the most southern part. So from efficiency point of view, it really works well, especially for anybody come from the Bay Area, because 505 drops you off right there off of coming off 80. So it really will save people driving time to go north again. You'll probably save 2 hours of driving time because from Dunnigan, and probably more than an hour from Dunnigan to the Davis Weir back down. And so it'll save everybody an hour of time by doing that, by making stops 6, 7, and 8 on day 3.
I see. Thank you, Mr. King. I'm not sure who came in first, but Ms. Forsyth.
I just wanted to jump in here because the authority takes private property access and private property rights very seriously. And so while Mr. King may have access to certain locations along that route, to safely travel this route with all of the cars that we are potentially anticipating, we need to do a one-way route down the levee. And that one-way route down the levee traverses a number of private property holders. And it is not clear that we have access to drive vehicles over their property. So I understand from Mr. King, we might have access to make stops at certain locations, but to safely get to those stops, we have to drive down the levee, which will require that we drive over numerous private property owners' lands. And it's not clear that we have access and the right to do that from them.
And this is with respect to the drive, which is identified in this itinerary as a 10-minute drive to Ballston Weir.
I think whoops, sorry, I took my video off by accident. I think I may have been inadvertently left off of the email from Mr. King. I'm not sure. I didn't quite see it in my email.
I am looking at the proposed well, I think it's either the initial proposed itinerary or the revised proposed itinerary from the authority.
Yep.
Yeah, Ms.
If-
Kenzie, I think the uncertainty surrounds the most northern stop along that set of stops. So it'd be stop 3 around the Davis Weir, the Calusa Indian Community Economic Development property. It's at least those areas.
And, yep. And Mr. Ferguson, while we can provide legal access to Ballston Weir through RD 108, their jurisdiction ends just shortly north of Ballston Weir. And they're really looking closely at Google Earth and being in that location before. There is no way to turn around this many cars before we get past RD 108's access. So we can, that's my way of saying, we can get folks on the levee to Ballston Weir, but we cannot get people safely off the levee. And that is, of course, a problem.
Understood. So the concern you're raising, I'm just trying to make sure I understand this. The concern you raise is with respect to all of the stops from, let's see, starting with the drive to Davis Weir through Ballston Weir.
Yes, once we enter the levee at Hahn Road, oh, no, excuse me, at Able Road, to get to Davis Weir, we need to stay on that levee all the way down and potentially exit at Tooley Road, either Hahn Road or Tooley Road. And in doing so, we will drive over a number of private property owners' land that it is not clear we have access to.
And I'm sorry, I sound like a broken record. I'm just still trying to understand. And part of it's because I haven't seen it. What you're saying is once we were to essentially enter the levee, it's not clear that we could get off the levee without crossing private property, without possibly permission. Understood. And that was just for the record, that was a nodding yes from Ms. Forsyth. Mr. Ferguson, I'll turn to you and then we'll go from there.
The only thing I'd add is that it may be worth asking the tribe if they're available to come back on August 22nd. Or excuse me, October 22nd. I don't see that as disrespectful in any way. We've got them scheduled already to speak out in the Sites Valley on the morning of the 10th, and there's no change in that. It would just be a matter if we can get the access squared away that we'd be asking them to join us again on the 22nd. It seems reasonable to me.
Yes, I'm thinking that my long pause is because I'm thinking this through. I mean, it sounds like we have two issues here. One is just the length of days, and then 2 is we don't actually have access. We don't have confirmed access to the stops that were initially proposed for day 2, right? That there are 2 problems we're dealing with.
Correct.
Okay.
Just the stops that Mr. King has proposed. The stops, or sorry, that's not true. We can provide access to the Dunnigan outfall and all areas and stops past that. Bird Creek and Dunnigan outfall. Sorry, I think, Aaron, yeah.
All right, I'm gonna let my team ponder this in the background. And maybe I'll turn in the meantime. Oh, Mr. King, I see your hand. So I'm sorry, I'm having to scroll to my team.
Yeah, so
frozen, yeah.
So first of all, the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation owns land right north of Davis Weir. I don't know if they want to provide access, but I don't know if there's access south of Dunnigan. Is that is that all has RD 108 got approval from all the landowners? I mean, you can go down this, but the biggest, I can totally provide access to my diversion site, which is on the, we don't even need to go to the levee. It's through my property. I have easements to it, and to everything, and totally can provide access. So that's stop 4. But if you want to tell, I mean, it's kind of ironic that the tribe can't get access to its land to take people to it if that's what they want to do. I don't want to speak for the tribe, but that's so stop 4 is not an access problem at all. It is a timing problem because I believe there's a good probability that we could have precipitation in late October. So I will not be able to have that stop for you to see for everybody to see the riparian habitat we have there and the reasons for our diversion, for our wetlands conversion, and that's what we're going to use our water rights for. So I think it'd be real informative, and also since I've now have 4 hours to speak, it would probably be equitable also. But
Thank you, Mr. King. Mr. Anderson, do you want to chime in on this?
I have a thought.
Great.
We keep September 9th to see stops 1, 2, and 3. Or I guess rather stop 1 and 2. Or excuse me, 1 and 3, because stop 2 is a rest break. So we go to both of the pumping stations on September 9th, and that is it. The second day, on day 10th, we would do everything that is left over on the proposed schedule for the 9th, which was the remaining stops, stop 4, stop 5, stop 6, and stop 7. That would leave us approximately, we would be done at about noon on the 10th, and we can add any additional sites that we have access to that we can confirm with Mr. King or the tribe and see those on the afternoon of the 10th. Everything else could fall to October 22nd.
What is everything else?
Everything else would be whatever we don't see that is currently proposed right now on day 2.
I see. Yeah.
We don't see on the afternoon of September 10th, we would then see on October 22nd.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Anderson, for thinking about this. Let's let these thoughts sit in our minds while we work through a more cross-examination. And we'll see if we come to a thought about this. As I said, my goal is to have a time and a place for September 9th and 10th firmed up as far as our initial first stop and where we're going to meet. It sounds like September 9th, we're going to meet up at, what I'm thinking is the answer to this is September 9th, we'll meet up at the Tehama-Calusa Canal Authority office. The timing is a question. I'm not sure if maybe it depends. We'll think about that. And then on day 2, we'd meet at the Project Authority office. I think that covers several versions of this itinerary. But that's as far. I'm just trying to think of what we need to decide for by tomorrow. Let's think about it. But Mr. King, did you have another comment?
Real fast. So the northern part north of Davis Weir is the Calusa National Wildlife Refuge. I said the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation. I know it's owned by the United States of America. I don't know which entity, so I just want to be clear about that. So we'll be driving across a state levy with land owned by the United States of America. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. King. All right, let's let that percolate. Are there any other procedural issues we should talk about now before we return to our second panel? All right, then if we can please have our 2 witnesses. And then I believe Mr. Reese, are you prepared with questions for the panel two witnesses?
I am. I've been kicked out briefly of the Zoom a couple times since we started, so I don't know what's happening, but hopefully that won't be a problem.
I hope not either, but if it is, we will, well, let's cross our fingers. And hope
Okay.
that-
All right. I have a few questions for Ms. Bizzoni, which is basically follow up on some of the other cross, and then some questions for Ms. Forsyth, and then a couple more for Ms. Bizzoni. So, Ms. Bizzoni, in your previous or testimony in response to some cross-examining, I think from Mr. Schutz regarding what I think was Exhibit 48, you stated that looking at annual averages loses the detail for the specific month. Do you recall that testimony?
I do.
And what exactly do you mean by that?
Can we pull up?
Maybe,
I'm sorry, Mr. Reese, if you don't mind, can we pull, I had exactly the same question. Can we pull up the slide that,
could we pull up
yes.
the document instead?
Yeah, I think it was 48.
Yeah, sites 48, I believe. I apologize. AHO 48, sorry.
Yeah, AHO, I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, AHO 048A, the PDF report in there. And table 3 is on PDF page 28.
Okay. You need me to repeat the question?
Yes, I think it would be helpful.
Okay. In response to some questioning from, I think, Mr. Schutz regarding some aspect of this table, you stated or testified that looking at annual averages, quote, loses, close quote, the detail for the specific month. And I wanted to explore further what you mean by that.
Yes, so this table is average monthly change and delta outflow under the VA without Lower San Joaquin, as stated in the title. And as you look by water year type, there are obviously different values in each month. In fact, some of those are negatives and some of those are positives. So if we focus in on, let's say the above normal year, we can see that there are additions on an average annual water year type basis in the months of April and May. You can see that there are considerably smaller volumes, both positive and negative changes in the other months. So looking at those months individually as opposed to just the 600, in my opinion, is more informative than just focusing on the 600.
Okay, I appreciate that. So how is the averaging? So you're suggesting that, well, this table, your understanding of this table in terms of the averaging, is it averaged over its monthly averages, then averaged over a longer, a certain period of time? Is it over the 82-year period that you use, that the project uses in CalSim, or is this a different averaging period of time?
But that is a great question, and it's a bit beyond my full understanding of this. As I mentioned earlier, Mr. Walker performed the majority of this analysis. I do know that this is based on CalSim 3 modeling prepared for the VAs. This modeling was not prepared by the Sites Authority, and I am not familiar with how these data were provided. So I apologize, but that's the limit of my understanding. I do know CalSIM 3 is a different time frame than CalSIM 2, so it's not the 82-year period.
Okay. And so I'm not trying to get into the specific modeling that'll be saved for Mr. Walker or some others, but I just wanted to clarify that it's your position and understanding that when you look at annual averages, you take monthly effects or sub-monthly effects, but then you average them monthly and then average them annually and then average them over an 82-year period, that you lose the detail of any specific effect that you might see on a monthly or a sub-monthly basis. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I think summaries on an average annual oh gosh, sorry, I'm gonna start over. Summaries on an average annual basis definitely lose the detail that you see on a monthly basis, even if those are monthly averages over the same time frame.
Okay. And the analysis for the sites project of potential effects on salinity in the South and Central Delta channels or on water levels through calcium were run over an 82-year period, right?
Yes, on a monthly, CalSIM 2 is an 82-year period and a monthly time step.
Okay. And so those monthly averages were overall averaged out even further over 82 years, correct?
I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure in what context. Maybe you could repeat the question.
So let's just take salinity analysis with regard to the project for the Central and South Delta channels. When CalSIM 2 the analysis is run through CalSIM 2, it takes monthly averages annualized out then over the full 82-year period. Isn't that right? To determine if there's any salinity increase impacts or effects.
Well, I did not participate in the salinity analysis. My general understanding, though, is that analyses were run on at least that monthly time step, and there might be averages presented, but the analysis themselves, I believe, were run on a monthly time step or sub-monthly time step.
And you believe that was done through CalSIM on a sub-monthly time step?
No, CalSIM provides monthly results. And I am not involved in salinity modeling, and I cannot speak to the analysis that was done. I'm simply saying that the CalSIM provides a monthly time step of results that can be used for the other sites modeling performed.
Okay, I appreciate that. So, but just it's a fair assessment based on your testimony earlier that you agree that averaging things out over long periods of time, averaging effects out over a long period of time, particularly over 82 years, can mask or sort of diminish effects that might occur in over a sub-monthly period or a shorter period of time.
I'm going to object as the bag.
Well, do you agree? I just want to confirm that you do agree that looking at annual averages does lose the detail that may occur in any particular month.
Yes, particularly depending on the question being asked, I believe that reviewing data on a monthly basis or the basis that the data are available for can be useful.
Are you aware of any sites project analysis for the Central or South Delta channels or anywhere else actually that did an analysis of a specific, say, 10-day time period in any particular month?
I cannot speak to salinity analyses that were performed for the project.
Okay. What about water level analysis?
I cannot speak to that.
Okay. In your testimony also, and I believe this was you and not Miss Forsyth, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. Regarding questions related to AHO 49, it testified that chart, the detail on that chart in response to a question from Mr. Schutz was should be analyzed on a daily basis. Do you remember that?
Vague. Be more specific about that chart in HO 49.
Well, there was a chart that was up. It was exhibit AHO 49, and it was a chart that you testified about. And I don't even need a specific chart. I'm asking you if you recall testifying that the effects should be analyzed on a daily basis.
I believe that I was referring to the tables that are, or the graphics that are presented in this report. That is currently up on screen, and some of the conclusions in my testimony come from those figures that are showing the information on a water year basis, and we're for a water year on a daily basis. So I believe the point I was making is my testimony conclusions were based on figures in this report, not these summary tables.
Okay. I have some questions here from Ms. Forsyth, and I'll come back with just a couple questions for you, Ms. Pizzoni. With regard to slide 26 of your testimony, and it's also set forth in paragraph 63 of your testimony, which I think you were questioned about earlier, but in there you indicate that there are improvements in water quality would also support and increase water supply reliability for other beneficial uses designated by the Water Quality Control Plan, including agricultural supplies. What agricultural supplies are you referring to whose reliability would be increased from this project specifically?
Directly, those agricultural supplies of agricultural water contractors that are storage partners of sites, Reservoir. Indirectly, there is a possible benefit to agricultural supplies from improvement of cold water pool conditions in the upper Sacramento River system. Those are probably accrue mostly to the CVP contractors. But the better reclamation can meet its obligations and go beyond those, the better we all are as a state.
Do you believe that the agricultural water supplies in the Central and South Delta will become more reliable because of the project?
I don't believe that I've seen any evidence that agricultural supplies in the Central and South Delta would become more reliable because of the project.
Have you seen anything to suggest that they would become less reliable?
I don't think that other, from our analysis and our EIR and the information that has been provided to me from our modeling team, I have not seen anything that suggests that.
Have you seen anything that suggests that salinity levels, even on an overall annualized aggregated basis over the life of the project, will increase because of the project in the Central and South Delta channels?
Have seen information out of the modeling results and in discussion with our modeling team that indicates that there are some small and infrequent, if I recall correctly, increases in salinity in some locations in the Delta. This was in the context of our technical discussions with Contra Costa Water District, but I don't recall seeing that being a long-term trend. And again, in the context of discussions, more so around Contra Costa's facilities, which isn't, I appreciate, is not quite the South Delta. And so that's why I'm making that distinction.
And you say long-term trends, that you understand that diversions occur on an immediate basis, and that effects of increased salinity in a Central or South Delta channel would have or could have an impact at that time when you're diverting with increased salinity versus over a long-term basis. You understand that difference?
I understand.
Okay. And if there are increased levels of salinity in the Central and South Deltas, even if, as you indicate, your recollection, even if they're small, do you believe those increases would increase the reliability of the water supply for in-Delta users in those South and Central Delta channels?
I don't believe that I have looked at those. I personally have looked at those in enough detail to make that assessment. Because in that assessment, we think about a number of factors in terms of what are those increases, what is the baseline condition, what are those increases above the baseline condition, what is the total salinity, is it still of a quality for agricultural uses? I don't think I have dug in enough to those in that discussion to make an assessment of that.
That's fair enough. With regard to section, sorry?
Oh, no, I think.
There was just a ghost there. Somebody said something. With regard to section 24 of your testimony. I'm sorry. Actually, that is that's actually Miss Brazzoni. I've got a couple of additional questions for Miss Brazzoni. Regarding section 24 of your testimony, where you state an opinion or, conclude that and I don't want to get into another panel, but it's also related to this. It's your opinion that the WA report provides sufficient information to support the conclusion, the petition for assignment, that water is available to meet project demands in addition to the projected demands in Shasta and Tehama counties. You're familiar with that testimony, right?
Yes.
And you base that in part on analysis of the calcium model and analysis. Is that right?
In part, however, as part of the water availability analysis, MBK also developed a methodology to post-process the calcium results to calculate what we call a water available value, as calcium provides diversion values. So there is a post-processing factor that was relied upon for this.
Okay. And I won't, you're not the person to, that's not what you're specifically testifying on, so I'm not going to focus on that. But I do just want to confirm that your understanding that the calcium analysis done for the sites project uses a hydrologic period from 1921 to 2003.
Yes, that is my understanding of the calcium 2 period of analysis.
And the project, that you're understanding, the project won't be operational before 2033, correct?
I believe that is generally the current schedule.
Okay. So would you agree that the last 20 years have been drier and hotter than the previous 82-year period?
I'm gonna object as to veg and compound.
Okay. Would you agree that the last 20 years have been hotter than the previous 82 years, if you have any knowledge of that?
I am definitely not a climate expert or a climate change expert in any way. I have seen reports and information that maybe generally state that.
Okay, that's fair enough. Sorry, another question for Ms. Forsyth. In your previous testimony, there was, and I believe it was Ms. Forsyth, if it was Ms. Bizzoni, then please let me know, but there was testimony that regarding the release of flows through the Yolo bypass, which would provide fish food. Do you recall that testimony?
I'd have to look to see if I used exactly those words, but I do have testimony on the Proposition 1 benefits.
Okay.
Yes.
So the question is these flows to the Yolo bypass that would help provide fish food or move fish flows down, do they in any way improve water quality conditions in the Central and South Delta?
I don't think that we have looked at that in isolation outside of the modeling for the whole of the project. Those flows are modeled to go through the Yolo bypass, and ultimately in the model, they go to outflow, Delta outflow. But I don't, we'd have to talk to the modeling team, but I don't believe that we have like a model that would isolate just those flows to be able to determine that.
To be able to determine if there's any improvement in South Delta water quality because of those flows?
Yes.
Okay.
The modeling team may say otherwise or may have done a sensitivity analysis, but I am not aware of one.
Okay. And would that be the same for water levels in the Central and South Delta?
Yes.
I don't have any further questions on cross for this panel.
Thank you, Mr. Reese. With that, I believe we turn to Mr. King. Do you have questions for this panel?
Yes, thank you, Presiding Officer Kinsey. So I'll start out with Ms. Bizzoni. And I'd like to actually go back to the memorandum of understanding with Coosa County. And I know it's also part of 139, exhibit 139, either exhibit that was brought up before or 1039 is fine. sites 139.
Let's try sites 139.
It's the letter to Mr. Ornbaum. It's attachment to it. And you go towards towards the latter third. The agreement should come up. So I'd like to focus on paragraph 4, and Mr. Stork had some good questions I wanted to follow up on.
I think we went paragraph number 4.
Paragraph number 4, I'm
They
sorry.
turned the numbers after the letters. I remember that part.
Yeah, page 2, paragraph 5. Right. And so Ms. Bozzoni, as I read this, it says that the county must have available storage allocation. And if it does not have sufficient storage allocation, then all flows will be allocated proportionally to all storage partners. So am I reading that correctly?
The county, in this instance, Colusa County would need to have space in its storage allocation or from lease storage from another storage partner.
Right.
Otherwise, then it could go to other storage partners in this scenario.
On a proportional basis. It'll allocate proportionally.
It would
Right.
be.
Go ahead, Ms. Bozzone. I think the answer was whether the water from Funks and Stone Corral Creek would be stored potentially on a proportional basis if Colusa County did not have available storage in its allocation or leased allocation.
Yes, it would be allocated to the other storage partners proportionate to their, we call it capacity interest, assuming that there is storage space available in their storage allocation as well.
Right. And there's no limitation on that allocation to who and where that water is used. So that water could be used, for example, the metropolitan Los Angeles area. Isn't that correct on a proportional basis? Is that a correct reading of that?
It would be allocated to any storage partner who has available space in their storage allocation.
Okay, great. And is there any, so then to maintain this allocation, it's my understanding that the county needs to continue make the payments on it. And is that correct? Payments for their rights as storage, their assessments as storage partners?
They would need to be a current storage partner, and they would need to, I guess, not be in default
Right.
in terms of the project.
Right, and they have a 10,000 acre feet allocation right now, is that correct?
No, that is not their storage allocation.
Okay, so I misunderstand that then. Then what is their annual assessments?
I am not sure what you mean by annual assessment, and
How much
I am
money?
not familiar.
Right, how much money, I'm sorry, how much money is the county paying the site's authority to maintain its storage allocation right now, each year?
Well, at this time, they do not have a storage allocation as the project has not, I can't remember the right term, but made that offer, the resolution to offer capacity, I believe it is. And I am not aware of or familiar with how much they are contributing towards the project financially at this time.
would you disagree if I said 1.2 million?
I have no idea how much the county is being assessed and paying for this at this time.
Okay,
And
so
Bizzoni, I just want to clarify, when you said the county, you mean Colusa County?
Yes,
Thank you.
Colusa County, I'm sorry. And so if they decided not to reduce their storage allocation, they would have less rights. But how about could they assign that? Could they sell these rights to somebody else?
Mr.
And
King,
is there-
if you would try to say Colusa County.
Colusa County.
if that's
Could
what you mean.
Colusa County sell their rights under this memorandum of understanding to another storage partner in the future?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Colusa County sell its storage allocation rights under the memorandum of understanding to another entity in the future.
The memorandum of understanding does not address the sale of rights.
Okay. And so it doesn't say it's affirmative or negative. You're just saying it's silent to that point regarding transferability.
If I could interject here, I have been personally involved in the negotiation of this MOU and continued discussion of this MOU. To my knowledge, I think paragraph 10 and 11 are the options. Alexa, turn off alarm. Where Colusa County can assign portions of the water resulting from the MOU to others. But we have not envisioned that Colusa County, nor has the county expressed an interest to sell their entire suite of rights under the MOU to somebody else. That is not envisioned. The MOU does allow the county to manage water from the creeks consistent with the operations plan, as all other members can manage their water. But we have not envisioned nor had discussions of like a complete transfer or sale of the rights of this MOU to another entity.
But you can't rule that out. If hypothetically the county decided not to pay or did not have the financial means to pay and decided to monetize its investment, it's not prohibited in under the terms of the MOU right now, correct?
I do not believe there is a successor clause in the MOU.
I'm talking
or
about
in
assignment clause, a transfer, a prohibition against assignment or transfer.
I'd like to object to these questions, calling for a legal conclusion.
I'm asking about the text of the contract. Is there a paragraph that prohibits transfer or assignment of this MOU to another entity?
Well, again, I'll object. That calls for a legal conclusion, the interpretation of the contract. So,
Well, let's see. I think I want to get. I think Mr. King you understand the point of Mr. King's question. I understand the concern about interpreting the contract, and this is getting murky because it's not clear to me what we're talking about here. So, let me try this. Mr. King, you're intending to ask about whether the county's right of first priority to water from Funks Creek and Stone Corral Creek is transferable under the MOU? Is that your question?
Correct. That's what I asked. Yes.
So I'll ask it this way, Ms. Forsyth, to your knowledge, based on your work with the contract, is there a provision in the MOU that addresses whether the county can transfer this first priority to Funks Creek and Stone Corral Creek?
I believe only to the extent allowed in paragraph, or only to the extent that speaks in paragraph 10 and 11.
Can
And
we scroll
could
down to 10 and 11? That would be great. And I'm not going to ask you to interpret it, but because it will speak for itself, as they say.
Okay, what what proportion of Colusa County is currently planned to be served by the site's reservoir? Well, what percentage of the acreage, or how many acres do you expect?
I do not know that offhand. To me, that's kind of there's potential two questions that you're asking there, Mr. King. What is the acreage of our storage partners in Colusa County? I don't honestly know. The county itself is a storage partner, so I would kind of say the entire county. We also have the component of our place of use, which is a subset of the county where water can physically be delivered out of Sites Reservoir to.
But why would you say the entire county? The entire county is not going to be benefit from this. Only the place where this water can be delivered, the stored water. So we have rights to Funk. So water from Funks and Stone Corral are going to be impounded, actually taken control of by the county, and that's not going to be made available to downstream right holders like ourselves.
Mr. King, let's get to the question.
Yeah. So how many acres in Colusa County will actually have rights? Will be able to use for their irrigation and irrigation purposes, municipal, if there's any, in Colusa County.
Objection, compound, asked and answered.
How many acres of irrigation will be used? How many acres will be irrigated by water stored in Colusa County?
Objection, vague.
I think didn't we just go over this, Mr. King? Didn't you just ask how many acres in Colusa
Right.
County?
Well, no, she said all of county. I want to know, I'd like to know her basis, how she could say how all of the county is going to benefit from this.
So,
Is the whole county?
Mr. King,
Yeah.
let me jump in here. Ms. Forsyth, I did hear you say that in response to the acres that would be served, I'm not sure if it was by Sites Reservoir water, but you can clarify for me, the acres to be served may be the entire Colusa County because Colusa County is a storage partner. Can you clarify what you meant by that?
Sure, thank you, Hearing Officer Kinsey. So I said the entire county in the context that the county itself is a participant in sites and will accrue benefits from participating in sites. Now, to where water will physically go out of Sites Reservoir within the county, we have identified a place of use within Colusa County where water from the reservoir can physically be served and legally be served under the water right as we envision. Exactly what acres and what parcels receive water out of Sites Reservoir in Colusa County is the county's decision, and those storage partners within the county, their decision to make. That is not something that is speculating on how they will utilize their water out of sites and on what properties they would apply that to. That's not something that we would get into as an authority of, as long as they are legally using water within our place of use and within our permit conditions, we would not dictate or control to them where they use the water within the county.
Wide
And-
area? It could,
Wait, Mr. King, hold on a minute. Let me, I want to follow up on that. Ms. Forsyth, is it correct that in theory, a number of acres that are both within the proposed place of use and are also within Colusa County either have been calculated or could be calculated? Was that a yes? I'm sorry, you cut out.
I apologize. I didn't realize I was off mute. I nodded and I said,
Oh.
yes, I didn't mean, but yes, it is something that could be calculated. I'm sorry for speaking out of.
No,
turn there.
Angela, it's good.
To either of your knowledge, has it been calculated? And if so, is there a place we can look in any of the exhibits?
I believe that it has been calculated, but I don't believe that it is included in any of the exhibits. I was just trying to confirm that. We could, however, pull up the place of use map that would show the county, the portion of the county included in the place of use. But I don't believe that there is an acreage breakdown.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And with that, back to you, Mr. King. Thank you.
Thank you. So, my last question on the contract is, paragraph 11, you have right in front of you, it's, number 11. In the event that any party in either Colusa or Glenn counties asserts an area ordinance claims, the county will make reasonable efforts to work with subclaimant. To that point, okay, so is that a fair reading of that paragraph, Ms. Bozzoni?
I believe that was a fair reading of it up until the last point of it. It was not a reading of the paragraph in entirety.
Okay. Would you like to add anything to what my reading?
I think, Mr. King, let's not.
Okay.
I think Ms.
I'm sorry.
Bozzoni was just stating that we didn't.
Okay. Very
didn't
good.
The
Thank
entire
you.
paragraph out loud.
Thank you. Can I bring up King Exhibit 12? So this is a deed, a easement deed was entered into by A.A. King, my grandfather, and J.S. King is his brother. They're parties to the first part, and parties to the second part are J.F. Campbell, who was first president of RD 27, and Charles de St. Maurice, who was the elected.
Mr. King, this is not the
Objection.
time to testify.
Okay.
Please get to the question.
So I was just trying to introduce, okay, this is an easement from August 12th, 1920. Can we go to the second page? And I know it's an old document, and the third paragraph says, and tell me if it's correct interpretation, Ms. Bozzoni, the correct reading. Said parties of the second part agree not to stop the natural drainage.
I'm sorry, can you hold for a moment, Mr. King? I can't find where we are.
It's a third paragraph. It's a second full paragraph, the third paragraph from the top.
So it's said, I see. Can we zoom in one more jog, Ms. Mullen? Thank you. Said parties. Okay, and if you could go a little more slowly, Mr. King, it would be helpful as we're interpreting this text here.
Thank you. Said parties of the second part agree not to stop the natural drainage of said lands adjacent to said right of way, but are to leave openings in said canal for the same. Is that a correct reading?
Objection, lack of foundation, lack of relevance.
I understand where you're going, but I think Mr. King may have just done this backwards, but go ahead and answer Mr. King's question, Ms. Bizzoni.
I believe the question is, was that an accurate reading of the sentence? And
Yes.
yes, that is, although blurry, what I believe the sentence says.
Okay. And then the last, I want to read the last paragraph before it says in witness whereof.
Where are you going with this, Mr. King?
I'm claiming a property right with the direct property right of the county of Colusa.
But
That,
why are you asking Ms. Bizzoni these questions?
Because the question is whether or not the county of Colusa has authority to enter into this memorandum of understanding with the sites without recognizing our rights.
Calls for a legal conclusion.
Let me ask Ms. Bizzoni this question. Ms. Bizzoni, and I'm not sure, Ms. Bizzoni, were you involved in the negotiation or drafting of the MOU with Colusa County?
I was not.
County? Okay. So I think this is, first of all, it's a question, if it's an appropriate
Ms.
question,
Forsythe?
Ms. Forsythe.
Okay.
And then Ms. Forsythe, as I understand, you were involved to some
I
extent.
was. Yes,
And Ms. Forsythe, you've seen this document before, haven't you?
I have, yes.
And I presented in public comment to the authority a couple years ago.
I recall that, yes.
Okay, so then I'd like to ask you about what's your interpretation or whether or not I'm reading the paragraph right. Did the last part, said parties of the first part reserve the right to use any and all waters that they can or lawfully use that flow down said canal, and this grant and right of way does not interfere with any of the original rights or water rights of the grantors of said lands adjacent to said right of way. Is that a correct reading?
I believe that is a correct reading.
Great. Well, thank you. So that's all for that part. So I'd like to go back to Ms. Bizzoni then. And ask her a couple questions about her testimony. That'd be cites 70.
To make a clarification, Ms. Bizzoni's testimony is site 70C.
I'm sorry, site 73. Thank you. So I would like to refer to page 15 of her testimony. And paragraph 20, the last part of section 22. There.
Just to be clear, it wasn't clear to me from looking at the document that site 70C was brought up. The corrected version.
Is this, I'm looking for confirmation from my team, is this 70C as opposed to 70C is the corrected version?
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yes, there we go. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, so is you in your last sentence says in my opinion that the cooperative approach taken by the authority includes Glenn County's in addition to ongoing planning to protect downstream fish and wildlife as well as senior right holders, supports inclusion of addition for assignment will not deprive Colusa or Glenn County of their current projected water needs. So do you think it's the Ms. Bizzoni, do you think the MOU between the county and site authority actually will protect water right holders such as ourselves below the Davis Weir Dam? And
Objection. Vague. But you did not. identify the water right holders. I apologize, I didn't realize it
Oh,
was
okay.
done.
So do you believe that the memorandum of understanding between the county, Coosa County, and Sites Authority will protect water right holders and beneficial interests such as
Let's,
T&M King
Mr. King,
Farms?
Mr. King, let's break that
So-
down.
Okay.
Try to avoid
water,
the ends, just
water-
ask the questions one
right.
at a time.
Okay, will protect water right holders um, between Davis Weir Dam and Balsam Dam, such as T&M King Farm.
The
Angela,
memorandum,
Oh, sorry.
the, the memorandum of understanding is in regards to Colusa County's potential participation in the sites project. That is separate from how the sites project authority would be ensuring that it would not injure senior water right holders. Those are two separate actions.
I'll just add to that a little bit. That is absolutely correct. I will say paragraph 2 and 3 of the MOU that we were looking at previously identify that the county is allocated the water from the creeks after subtracting any releases that may be required to meet downstream conditions in those creeks pursuant to our expected water right permit. And then paragraph 3 goes on to specify that a little bit more, identifying generally that we may have release requirements in our water right permit to satisfy downstream water right holders and environmental conditions in the creeks. So the county is allocated the net amount of water after the authority has satisfied its legal obligations to downstream water right holders and to in-stream flows under Fish and Game Code 5937.
Okay, I understand that. Then I guess the question is the sites authority, is the current operations plan, does that protect downstream, protect the diverters between, like T&M King Farms, between Davis Weir Dam and Balsam Dam?
It does address releases to Funks and Stone Corral Creeks, and it does discuss that releases will be made to ensure no injury to downstream water right holders.
So is that then your interpretation is during times when there's flows from Funks and Stone Corral Creeks, water right holders like T&M King Farms below Davis Weir Dam and Balsam Dam should be receiving water?
I don't believe that, well, let me start over. It would not be an obligation of the sites authority to release more water than was flowing in from those creeks, or at a time when water was not available from those creeks. So there would be the need to understand downstream demands, that there was a water right that is in season at that time, and that there was actively inflow from those creeks that may have otherwise been below the proposed dam locations, downstream from the proposed dam locations. And adjustments to releases may be made accordingly.
This year, is it correct that this year was a rather wet year and that there were flows in Funks and Stone Corral during May of 2024?
I do not know the flow conditions during the month of May 2024.
But based off of your analysis, you would in your analysis of flows, you would expect that there be flows in Funks and Stone Corral during 2024?
Objection, calls for speculation.
Okay. Can we bring up King 54? So there's a series of photos here. Keep on scrolling down. So what just yeah, that's fine right there. Keep on scrolling down a little bit more. So Ali, does that look like Ben King standing in some water?
Objection, lack of personal knowledge.
I think she has personal knowledge.
Mr. King, where are you going with this?
Well, this the sign says Davis Weir Bladder Dam, May 14th, 2014. And there's no water coming over.
Objection, it's effectively testimony.
Right, what is your question? What is it that you need Ms. Forsyth or Ms. Bozzoni to testify?
Shouldn't there be water flowing in Inclusive Basin Drain during May of 2024?
Objection, calls for speculation.
I still don't understand your point. So this is, you are asserting that this is a photograph of you when? I thought you said 2013.
To May 14th, 2024. That's what the sign says.
I can't see the sign.
Okay, but you can go up, can you scroll back up?
I see that sign.
Yeah. And then there's also a dead fish right there. Can you see that?
But
Right below.
No, Mr. King, this is not the time to present evidence. What are your questions going to be for Ms. Bozzoni and Ms. Forsyth?
Shouldn't there, in the month of May, in a wet year, shouldn't there be water flowing down the Inclusive Basin Drain, the whole entirety of the Inclusive Basin Drain from Funk's and Stone Corral?
And what is the basis for them to, what do you mean by shouldn't there be?
Based off of her knowledge about what flows are, based off her calculated flows and timing of flows for that went into the background for the memorandum of understanding between the county and Sites Reservoir.
So is your question that wouldn't there normally be flows in May at this location? Is that your question?
That's my question, yes.
And for Ms. Bozzoni, do you recognize what location this is in the photograph?
Do you recognize this location?
Okay, are you able to answer that question? I realize it's a bit general.
I previously said that I am not aware if there were flows in Funk's and or Stone Creek Corral Creeks in May of 2024. Along with that statement, I would add that through our analyses, we are aware of other water right holders upstream of this location who have rights to divert from those creeks. Beyond knowing the exact flows and exact demands upstream, I can't say anymore. Or beyond not knowing those, I can't say anymore.
Would you believe that a 1948 appropriative right and a riparian rights should have priority over those flows you might be thinking about?
Objection, calls for a legal conclusion, speculation.
What flows are we talking? What are you trying to establish? I mean, I'm trying to help you, Mr. King, but what are you trying to establish here? I still don't understand.
That there is not enough water for the area of origin in the area between Davis Weir and Baldwin Dam now, and that it's going to be that if the county goes forward with this memorandum of understanding, it's going to be even less.
I think this is an appropriate topic for, I don't know the extent to which it's in your case in chief, but for rebuttal. This sounds like testimony that should come from you and based on evidence that you would put into the record. I don't think it's productive. I mean, there may be some pointed questions for Ms. Bozzoni and maybe Ms. Forsyth about their analysis, but I don't think this line of questioning is particularly productive and a good use of our time here. I would welcome rebuttal testimony from you that I can read on this point, and that is not limited.
Okay, I'd like to bring for one last question from Ms. Bozzoni, and that's King 69.
For
I'm
a
sorry.
clarifying
Wait.
point, I believe King 69 was objected to by the authority. If I'm remembering correctly, I just want to mark that for the record. This was an exhibit that was entered late.
Yeah, so I understand there's a pending motion to bring it in. I'll allow it here for purposes of, well, at least we'll see what happens, but for purposes of cross.
Thank
you. But the standing objection is noted.
And I'm sorry, this is a court reporter while she's pulling that up. Can I get clarify on, is it bladder or balsam, or is there two?
It's it's a Davis Weir bladder dam. That's what I'm calling it. And then there is also a balsam dam. The location
I
that
don't,
I'm
how do you spell balsam?
Balsdon.
Ballsden. Okay, thank you. I was just clarifying that.
Thank you. I'm sorry for my gravelly voice. So can you go to page 12? First, so this is Ms. Pizzoni, this is an MBK document. Do you acknowledge that?
Objection. Vague, lack of foundation.
Okay, so then let's go to
Well, let's try that. Hold on. Ms. Bizzoni, do you recognize this document?
I recognize it from reviewing it after Mr. King submitted it as King 69.
But prior to
And
that
my
time,
understanding is that it it was prepared by a colleague of mine at MBK, or at least MBK contributed to it.
thank you. Mr. King, back to you.
okay, so if you go to page 12 of the document. And so here Ms. Pizzoni, does this MBK document talk about the historic operations of Davis Weir, and is that a proper picture photo of Davis Weir?
Objection compound.
It is. Ms. Bizzoni, do you recognize the location in this photograph?
Yes, I do recognize this location.
And would you identify the location as Davis Weir?
Yes, I believe this is Davis Weir, and I believe that, although if I was shown this, I don't know if I would know that, without the reference at the bottom identifying it as Davis Weir.
Understood. Yeah, that fair enough. Mr. King, back to you.
Next page, please. So, Ms. Bizzoni, do you believe MBK actually compiled this chart, these tables and this chart?
I honestly have no clue where this data came from, whether it be from MBK or otherwise.
Can we go to, can you scroll down 3 more pages? This is Ms. Forsythe, did you receive this email?
I believe that I did. Yes.
And who is it from?
The email is from Kyle. I'm probably not going to pronounce this correctly, but Cutson
Right. Yeah.
with MBK Engineers.
And the first line, does it include reference that Kyle, Ann, and Gary of MBK had this meeting and presented this?
And the first line identifies that Ann, Gary, and Kyle of MBK participated in a meeting, and the agenda is identified below. I don't believe it speaks to who produced the PowerPoint.
Okay. Okay, but it's and Gary's probably Gary Kingland and Ann Williams. Would that be your assumption based off who you know? MBK?
Objection. Speculation.
I'm not.
Okay, so if we go back to the previous 2 pages, go back to that chart. So, Ms. Bizzoni, does it seem like there's less water coming over Davis Weir Dam and less flows less natural flows generally coming from Davis Weir Dam since 2014, 2013?
Objection. This is Andy Hitchings. Again, the relevance of this, I want to make clear, Davis Weir is not a feature of the project. All of this questioning seems irrelevant to the operations of the sites project. And I would echo what the hearing officer stated earlier as far as whether this is a productive use of time, all of our time.
I have a rebuttal to that.
Sure, go ahead, Mr. King.
Yesterday, the executive director, Mr. Brown, actually said that Glen Cluse Irrigation District was intended to receive sites water somewhere in the future, and this is a feature of the backbone of the lower part of sites of Glen Cluse Irrigation District.
So let me ask this, and I don't want to go into great detail, but well, maybe I'll ask. We're in an awkward position. I know you will be testifying, Mr. King. Maybe I'll ask this of Ms. Bizzoni. Are you familiar with the, generally speaking, the location of the Davis Weir?
I am.
Where is it?
Oh gosh, well, that's a lot different of a question.
Where is it relevant to Sites Reservoir and any flow coming out of Sites Reservoir?
So,
Or Ms.
flow,
Forsyth, either of you, whoever would like to answer this very general question.
I hate orienting without a map, but I will do my best. So flows, currently, so there's Funks Creek and there's Stone Corral Creek, and the two converge, to the west of the proposed site's location. From there, when they are, I believe at that point, Stone Corral Creek, they continue flowing west and are eventually, they kind of get, I think it goes in a siphon maybe under the Glen Cluse Irrigation District main canal. And eventually they may contribute to the Colusa Basin drain. And I believe
Stone Corral Creek flows into the Colusa Basin drain?
And then continues to the Sacramento River. However, I don't know if there's any physical continuation of the creeks to the river at this time. So yes, the creeks do flow into the drain.
And then where is Davis Weir?
Miles downstream from that location.
From which location?
Sorry, yes, from the location where Stone Corral Creek would kind of flow in. I think it would, well, I won't pull up a map. I don't like speaking without a map.
I know, I'm putting you on the spot. So Davis Weir is located on the Colusa Basin drain.
It is.
That's helpful too. Downstream of the convergence of Stone Corral Creek and the Colusa Basin drain.
Correct.
Thank you.
And it is where the GCID main canal essentially meets with the Colusa Basin drain.
And then I'll just ask you this directly. Mr. King, where is your property located with respect to the Davis Weir?
It's about 2-3 miles south of that.
Is that downstream?
Downstream, yep. And it's between but it's north of Baldwin Dam.
Thank you. That's helpful. So your line of questioning here is to, as you were pursuing before, trying to establish existing flows in the Colusa Basin drain that I think you will further assert will be affected by the proposed project. Is that right?
That's right. And also, the other question, and I don't know if it's on within this panel, but under the WISP, one of the goals of WISP funding is actually make actually fix drainage problems and fix flow problems with WISA money. That's one of the objectives, and that is what I'm trying to do in this process is actually have this project result in better drainage and actually provide water to water right holders, but more importantly to beneficial in-stream flows and in-stream rights.
And so your questions here about this, so this chart we're looking at is not something that was prepared by either of the witnesses here. Why are you asking questions of these witnesses about this chart?
Because Ms. Forsyth actually received it, and it was prepared by Ms. Bazzoni's firm.
But what part of, so are you asking Ms. Forsyth whether she looked at the chart?
No, I just want to be able to bring it in to actually make it validate that the production of that, and that she actually knows the chart or she received it.
All right, well then ask her, why don't you ask her that? We can start there.
Have you seen this table before, Ms. Forsyth?
I can say confidently that I received that email from Kyle that had this attached. I don't recall actually reviewing the attachment when Kyle sent it to me. However, I did review this when you submitted it as an exhibit.
So, can I, Ms. Bazzoni, can I continue, Ms. Presiding Officer Kinsey?
Well, if you're, once again, I think this is something that should come in on, if anywhere, on rebuttal, because I'm not sure what these witnesses have to do with the content of this chart, other than to just tell me what is on the chart, which I can see by looking at it if it comes into evidence. Is there something more that these witnesses have to add to my understanding of this chart?
The asterisk on the bottom, or actually the number of zero flow days by water yield type. There's over a couple hundred zero flow days, and several of them are in April, May, and June during time of natural flows.
And so your question for the witnesses would be what?
Is this are the zero flow days, do they coincide with natural flows from Stone Corral and Funk Slough? The April, May, June zero flow days.
Why I think that there's something here, but I think, once again, what these are not the witnesses to ask this question because they didn't make the chart, and I don't think are testifying.
Okay.
Well
then,
give me a moment. Give me a moment to see if there's a question here. Let me ask this. Although there's a lack in Ms. Bazzoni or Ms. Forsyth, when you considered whether the operation of the proposed project would potentially impact junior right holders, did you consider flow information available flow information at Davis Weir?
No.
That's helpful and direct. I think it's helpful. Mr. King, does that help answer your question here?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Ms. Bazzoni, did you consider in-stream beneficial uses below below Davis Weir and Balsam Dam when you said that it would not the project would not negatively impact downstream rights, including beneficial rights?
I am not aware of any in-stream water rights.
Okay.
If that was the question.
Okay.
In this reach.
Okay. So then can I bring up King 22? Ms. Bizzoni, do you have any familiarity where the diversions for the Wallace brothers are?
Objection, relevance.
Let's
It-
wait.
it-
Let's start. Go ahead, Ms. Bizzoni, whether you can answer this question. We'll start there.
I believe they are downstream from Davis Weir.
And this is decision 1590? Is that correct, what it says?
That is what this says.
Okay, can you go to page 7, please? And go on down to paragraph 5. And it says here that it's one of the order, it's a condition of the order, and talks about how water will be allocated under this decision. And I'm gonna read it. It says, provided there will be no interference with other vested rights and in-stream beneficial uses. And provided further that all terms or conditions protecting in-stream beneficial uses be observed. Do you believe that this decision states that there are in-stream beneficial uses below Davis Weir and above Baldwin Dam?
Objection, vague, lack of foundation. He's asking generally about whether this establishes beneficial uses.
Does this decision actually state that there should be protection for in-stream beneficial uses near the Wallace diversion points?
Objection, vague. That's not what the line you just read says.
Let me see if I can cut through some of this. Ms. Bizzoni, when you responded to Mr. King's question and responded that you were not aware of any water rights in this and correct me if I'm mistaking this, but let me try this. I believe you said you were not aware of any water rights on the Colusa Basin drain for in-stream beneficial uses. Is that an accurate paraphrase of what you said?
Yes.
In that statement, did you intend to also include in-stream beneficial uses that may be encompassed within the general reference of the public trust or public trust uses?
No, I did not understand that as the question, and I may have misinterpreted.
Mr. King, does that help?
So that's the question that I would like to ask. So thank you. So so do you acknowledge that there should be in-stream beneficial uses under the public trust doctrine in the area of the Colusa Basin drain below Davis Weir and above Baldwin Dam?
Objection, calls for a legal conclusion. It seems to be outside the scope of this panel.
Hold on. Let me ask it this way. Let's try this. Ms. Bizzoni, when you were in your analysis of whether or not the operations of the Sites Reservoir project, the proposed project, how it could affect existing water users, in your analysis, did you consider impacts to public trust uses?
I want to make sure that there's a common understanding of what I have done for this project. So I have performed a water availability analysis. And that included a water availability analysis for Funks and Stone Corral Creeks. And as part of that, and as well as I stated in testimony yesterday, we have proposed a term relative to those creeks that additional studies are needed to understand releases needed to maintain, pursuant to Fish and Game Code 5937. I hope I got that number right.
You did.
So we acknowledge that additional studies are needed pursuant to that. As far as our water availability analysis, we did not include any assumptions for in-stream beneficial uses. More stated that as those are developed, We understand that that may affect availability from the creeks because we would be ensuring those flows downstream from the proposed dams.
Thank you, Ms. Bizzoni. That's helpful. Mr. King, back to you.
Great. So I'm done. Thank you, Ms. Mazzoni, for your time. I'd like to ask Ms. Forsythe some questions now. And Ms. Forsythe, you stated in your presentation that one of the issues before this proceedings is whether the project is substantially in accord with a state application that is part of a coordinated plan. Is it true that the application to the California Water Commission in 2017 included the Delavan pipeline? Is that true?
That is correct.
And that at least a portion of the flow of water come from Sites Reservoir would flow down the Colusa Basin drain under in that plan submitted?
I believe, and this has been quite some time, that the only portion of water that would have flowed down the drain in that 2017 application would have been the water dedicated for the Yolo bypass. So all other sites' water would have discharged directly to the Sacramento River via the Delavan pipeline.
Okay, and the water that would flow down, would the water that flow down the drain to the Yellow bypass help beneficial in-stream rights?
While we just reviewed the document previously, I guess I don't feel that a reservation for beneficial in-stream rights in somebody's water right is actually establishing a beneficial in-stream right.
Well, does the public trust doctrine apply to the Colusa Basin drain?
Objection, calls for a legal conclusion.
Sustained.
Okay, would there be water in the channel under the previous 2000 in the operations plan for 2017 application? Would that provided for water to be in the channel downstream of the Delavan pipeline?
Objection, just because this line of questioning is continuing, I'm going to object on the basis of relevance. It's not clear why the application from 2017 is relevant to this panel.
Why are we? That's a good question.
Because
Why are we talking about 2017?
Because it's whether or not it's substantially, whether or not all the permutations of the sites, the Colusa Reservoir, actually had a assumption that that water would go down the Colusa Basin drain. The current 2021 application is the first that actually provides for conveyance through a cement conveyance channel through a pipeline. All other permutations of the Colusa Reservoir back to 1950 assumed that water would not go through a cement conveyance structure and a pipeline, but actually would make its way to the river or would go down the Colusa Basin drain.
Okay, I understand that. So, Mr. King, your point is that your argument here is that these earlier permutations of the Sites Reservoir, what is now the Sites Reservoir project, that's relevant to an understanding of whether this version of the project is consistent with the California Water Plan and other plans.
Yes. Yes. I'm
sorry, you guys interrupted each other, and I don't think I got a clear record, Miss Hearing Officer Kinsey.
I'm not sure where do I start?
So Mr. King, your point is, your argument here is that these earlier permutations of the Sites Reservoir, what is now the Sites Reservoir project. How about there?
Let me think about where I was. That
That's
these earlier
good.
permutations are relevant to whether or not this version of the project is consistent with the California Water Plan and other relevant plans.
Correct. Yeah.
And then I think, so that was to establish the relevance of the 2017 version and is it the Donovan?
Delavan,
Delavan,
Delevan.
Delavan, thank you.
It's right on top of the Delavan National Wildlife Refuge. So,
We discussed this at fair length yesterday. What else do you have to add? I mean, is there more to this that is we had these two witnesses yesterday.
right, but I didn't have, we deferred part of my questions to today.
Yes.
Okay. So my question is, when did the Tejamalucas Canal, do you know when the Tejamalucas Canal became operational?
I do not offhand.
Was it
No.
operational in 1950?
Objection calls for speculation. Witnesses.
And that's a
Why are
factual.
Personal
Mr.
knowledge.
King, why are these questions for these witnesses? Where are
Because Miss Forsythe, have you made the statement that the current plan, operations plan is consistent with consistent with what was envisioned in 1950 with the Clusa Reservoir, or that's a question.
I have made the statement that the current version of Site's Reservoir project is substantially in accord with a statewide plan.
And what is different between, in accord with statewide plan? Is there any besides what may be, is there water allocated to the reservoirs, to the refuges the refuges from sites?
Objection vague.
Do you mean under the current version of the
The
proposed
current version, right?
And then if you can rephrase try the question again, I just need to remember it.
Yeah, I'll actually go on from that. That's fine. Well, what did you on one of your points, Ms. Forsythe, and it's page 27, I believe, of your presentation. It said it would advance similar purposes for Clusa Reservoir and not conflict with purposes in remaining petitions. So, what purposes did you intend there?
In that context, I intended the purposes of use as described in the context of a water right and the water right proceeding, where the Site's Reservoir, as the authority has proposed it today, has the same purposes of use as proposed in the state filed application. However, for Site's Reservoir as proposed today, we have added, I believe it is 5 incidental uses of water.
Okay.
In addition to those that are the same.
Right. Okay, thank you. Then can we go to King 16? Ms. Forsythe, have you ever seen this bulletin of the Department of Water Resources?
Objection, lack of foundation.
Ms. Chester, can you follow up on that? Lack of foundation for what?
Well, I mean, my concern is that, well, I'll withdraw it. I'll let the witness answer.
Can you just scroll down first so you can see the full title?
Okay.
I don't believe I've seen this before.
Do you identify it as a study or a bulletin by the Department of Water Resources completed in May 1964?
It appears to be so.
Okay. Can we go to page, it's King 1634 and it's page 21, but on the PDF it's page 34.
I'm sorry, in this exhibit?
Yeah. And go to the bottom of that. So Miss Forsythe, were you aware that the original plan for the Colusa Basin Drainage Canal was to be a bypass?
I was not aware.
Okay. Do you think is that a fair reading of that first sentence?
From just simply reading those two first, or those two sentences that
No,
start
the
with
first
in
sentence, the
early
first,
years,
yeah.
and this bypass would, I think that's a fair reading of just those two sentences.
Great. And then can we go to the top of the next page? And it says that it referred to the center bypass, and that it was intended that the Colusa Basin drain, the Colusa Basin would have a similar bypass like Sutter. And then the last sentence says,
Mr. King, where are you reading from?
So the previous page, on top of the previous page, the bottom of the previous page, excuse me.
Right, I saw that part. We were there.
It says the construction of the Sutter bypass on the east side of the river as part of the Sacramento River Flood Control Project to carry Sacramento River eliminated the need for a similar bypass in the Colusa Basin. Okay, consequently, so they didn't need that, but consequently, desirable drainage features which would have been included in the proposed Colusa Basin bypass were not constructed. Is that, Ms. Forsythe, is that a fair statement that the Department of Water Resources in 1964 determined that desirable drainage features were not included in the Colusa Basin?
Objection. It calls for speculation about the intent of what's written on the page. The document speaks for itself.
Okay.
Sustained. Mr. King, again, why these witnesses? What is the question?
Because the drainage issues in the Colusa Basin have existed since the failure of the
I'm not asking you to, what is the connection between this document and
it has to go with good drainage, and also then how drainage might affect water quality.
so it goes to Ms. Forsythe and Ms. Forsythe's conclusions about water quality in her testimony?
Well, drainage first. So does this imply that was not good drainage features constructed in the Colusa Basin drain?
And why
Objection.
is that relevant to the hearing issues?
Because bad drainage causes water quality issues.
So where this is going is that the construction of your connections, the construction of the site's reservoir project will, according to this line, affect water quality because of the lack of proper drainage in the area. Is that where you're going?
Right. And the lost opportunity to correct the drainage, which could have been accomplished.
And this is, hold on, this is a
yeah.
question from Ms. Forsythe because of her conclusions about compliance with the water quality control plans?
Yes.
Okay. Now I think I understand the connection. What is your question here?
Do you believe that the Department of Water Resources made the statement that there were desirable drainage features that should have been constructed as of
Objection.
1964?
Mr. King, the document says what it says. I think your question is whether, I believe your question is going to be, and I'll ask it, Ms. Forsythe, did you consider drainage in the area of the Colusa Basin drain when reaching your conclusions in your testimony about compliance with the water quality control plans and water quality objectives in those plans?
I would say yes, we did. because we evaluated water quality extensively in our final EIR analysis and in our water quality section, which there'll be an entire panel on water quality. That analysis included an analysis of effects of water quality in the portions of the Coosa Basin drain that we are utilizing for the project. And that is functionally from Ballston Weir south. So that analysis looked at that quite extensively.
And in that analysis, to your knowledge, was there consideration of this particular bulletin from the Department of Water Resources?
Not that I am aware of, but that is kind of my personal awareness. Whether the authors of that section were aware of this, I cannot speak to.
Thank you. And I'll turn this back to you, Mr. King, you may have more questions for Ms. Forsyth, but knowing that there is a water quality panel coming up who may have more information for you.
I understand. Thank you. So can we bring up King 30? Ms. Forsyth, are you familiar with this document? The environmental assessment between the transfer base supply between of the Central Valley Project water to the Coosa Drain Mutual Water Company?
I am merely aware of its existence because you've mentioned it previously in our discussions. I am not familiar with the document at all.
Okay. And can we then go to page 8? It's PDF 8. Yeah. Have you ever heard about the GCID's Glen Coosa Irrigation District's conservation and recycling strategy to achieve a zero outflow policy?
Sorry, Mr. King, I thought you were finished.
That is a question. Yeah.
Yeah, objection again, relevance, and also Ms. Forsyth just indicated she was not familiar with this document.
What is the relationship, Mr. King, between what you just asked and this document?
Oh, the document goes into the USBR stating that GCID had a zero outflow strategy.
Mr. King, Ms. Forsyth did indicate she hasn't read this document. So I think this document is not helpful. You can still ask the question. I'll let you ask the question.
Okay. Does this document mention
no, Mr. King, not this document. She has not seen this document. She just testified to that. I think your question was about zero outflow. Is that the term that you used?
Yeah.
If Ms. Forsyth is familiar with the way you're using the term, then maybe she can answer that question.
Okay, what is zero outflow policy result in the buildup of salts in the water?
Let me try this. Ms. Forsyth, are you familiar with GCID's so-called zero outflow policy?
I am not.
Okay. Mr. King, I think we have exhausted this line of questioning because Ms. Forsyth just testified that she is not familiar with that policy.
Okay. Then can we go to King 26? And go to page 28. Wait, actually, I have to identify this. This is Ms. Forsyth, or Ms. Bazzoni or Ms. Forsyth, are you familiar with the service agreement between the Coosa Drain Mutual Water Company and the United States Bureau of Reclamation?
I am not,
Okay.
other than being generally aware of it. Sorry, Angela. Other than being generally aware of it from discussions, I am not familiar with any of the details.
Okay. So would that mean you are not aware that the United States recognizes that water quality is a concern within the service area of the Coosa Drain Mutual Water Company?
Objection. She stated she was not aware of the contents. I think he just reiterated his point in the form of a question. It was effectively testifying.
I think that's fair, Mr. King. Ms. Forsyth just testified she's not aware of the contents other than generally the specific content of this document.
Would it be relevant to your consideration about water quality concerns and the state water plan if the United States Bureau of Reclamation had concern about water quality in the Coosa Basin Drain?
When we look at the sites project, we look at it from its effects and changes to the existing conditions. And we did that in the final EIR, EIS. There is another panel on water quality. I believe they identified the final EIR, EIS identified water quality concerns in the Coosa Basin drain and the potential effects of the sites project on those concerns. Now, I believe the focus would have been from Ballston Weir downstream, being the section of the drain that the authority would be releasing water into.
Is there any concern or consideration of the area between Davis Weir and Balsam Dam?
Objection vague. Consideration of what?
Consideration of water quality issues and whether or not the United States of America has concern about water quality in the whole of the Coosa Basin Drain?
I cannot speak
I'll
to the
just say
United
objection, speculation, but to the extent you can answer, go ahead.
Yeah, I cannot speak to the United States' concern with water quality in the Coosa Basin drain.
Okay.
We
Ms.
did,
Go
we
ahead.
did look at water quality of releases from Sites Reservoir into the creeks. Stone Corral Creek in particular, as I identified in my testimony and overview presentation, we identified a less than significant impact in Stone Corral Creek. That impact we expect to accrue and be realized in the upper portions of the creek. I think the Coosa Basin drain, by the nature of its title, it is a drainage channel. And drainage channels mean that inherently there's only so much natural flow in them, and they're used to convey drainage water. And at times that can present some water quality considerations, especially as we analyzed in the EIR downstream of Ballston Weir.
And so the public trust, does the public trust doctrine apply to the Coosa Basin Drain?
Objection calls for a legal conclusion.
Okay. So let's go to King 35.
Mr. King, approximately how much longer or how many more questions do you think you have?
10 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
You can hold that to me. Let me to it. Ms. Forsyth, have you seen this before? This
I
document?
believe that you may have sent this to me before, but I have not read this document.
Okay. And is it correct to say this is the Coosa National Wildlife Water Management Plan of March? So if you could scroll down the date, March 2011.
Objection. The witness already acknowledged she doesn't have personal knowledge of the document.
Is that Ms. Forsythe, is that what the cover of this document says?
That is what the cover of this document
Thank
says.
you. Can we go to King 35-9, page 9, PDF style? Yeah, go down the page a little bit, please. Ms. Forsythe, were you aware that the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation drilled test wells in 1990 regarding groundwater quality on the Colusa National Wildlife Refuge and the Sacramento National Wildlife Refuge?
Objection, just note that the witness has already stated she doesn't have knowledge of the contents to the extent she can answer otherwise. She can go ahead.
I am not aware.
You're not aware. Okay, thank you. Were you aware that the groundwater at the Sacramento, well, let's just talk about Colusa. Were you aware that the groundwater at the Colusa National Wildlife Refuge was deemed to be contaminated by mercury?
Objection, lacks foundation, assumes facts not in evidence.
That's sustained.
Does this, Ms. Forsythe, does it say that a chemical, does this document state the chemical analysis of these groundwater wells
Mr.
at the
King,
Sac?
Mr. King, this document is Ms. Forsythe. Let me ask this, Ms. Forsythe, is there any information? Let me see, how can I phrase this? In looking at this paragraph in front of us here, number 5, groundwater, is there information presented in this paragraph that you relied upon in your testimony with respect to potential water quality impacts of the proposed project?
In looking at this paragraph, there is not information that I relied upon in preparation of my testimony. I will just say that hearing officer Kenzie, you asked me in my preparation of my testimony of water quality impacts. I just want to be clear that my testimony is related to the partial assignment, petition for assignment and release from priority exclusively. So it's looking at water quality objectives or a water quality control plan, inconsistency or conflicts with a water quality objective or a water quality control plan.
Thank you, Ms. Forsythe. I appreciate that clarification. That's
So my last line of questioning, two things. One, did the ERA consider the EIR, and maybe this is a water quality issue, I should defer, consider the change in the approved MCL by the state of California for hexavalent chromium, the hexavalent form of chromium?
Objection.
I'm
The
sorry.
EIR,
Will you ask that one more time, Mr. King?
did the EIR consider the change in the acceptable limits for the hexavalent form of chromium?
What change?
In April of 2024, the State Water Resource Control Board lowered the standard to 10 parts per billion from 50.
I do believe that would be a question best answered by the water quality control or the water quality panel
Right.
that will be
Okay.
coming up.
Thank you. So my last question is regarding the US EPA 303D list. And whether or not you are aware of the impaired water body status for Colusa Basin Drain for mercury and low dissolved oxygen.
Objection, compound.
Are you aware for the impaired water body status for mercury contamination in the Calusa Basin drain?
I was aware that the drain is listed on a 303D list. But honestly, I had kind of forgotten what the specific listing was.
And were you aware that it also is on the 303D list for low dissolved oxygen?
Objection assumes facts not in evidence. She didn't confirm the listing.
So Freshwater Creek, do you know where Freshwater Creek, do you have any familiarity with Freshwater Creek is?
I do not.
Okay. Do you know that it enters the Calusa Basin drain north of the Calusa National Refuge?
Mr. King, she just testified that she doesn't know where the creek is.
All right. So were you aware that the Freshwater Creek had impaired water status for indicator bacteria?
I've never heard of Freshwater Creek before this discussion.
Have you ever heard of Powell Slough?
I am not familiar with Powell Slough.
So you haven't been aware that it actually has low dissolved oxygen?
Mr. King,
Objection.
Ms. Forsyth testified she is not aware of that creek. There is no reason to ask questions about it because she's already submitted that testimony.
Great. Well, thank you for enduring me, I guess. But I'm done with my questioning. Thank you.
Thank you,
I'm
Mr.
sorry.
King.
Is it Palace Slough?
Powell.
Powell. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Hearing Officer Kenzie, could I make a procedural point, please?
Sure.
Yeah, we just went through about, I think by my count, a little bit more than another hour and a half of cross-examination and use of time by Mr. King, and an estimate was given that 95 minutes were expended yesterday. So we're, by that math, a little bit over 3 hours. And your ruling this morning was that he would be afforded 4 hours, Mr. Ornbob 4 hours. They could divide the time between them as they see fit, as I understood your ruling. So I just want to make a note that if there is a request for good cause shown later to expand those times, it was a very conscious decision, it appeared to me, to use this time for time that was directed to him that might be better used for rebuttal or otherwise, and that cross was not the appropriate time to do it. I just want to put that down now in the record so that if we later have a request and an attempt to show good cause, that we have a reflection of what we've been through the last 2 days.
Thank you, Mr. Hitchings. Noted. And Mr. King, I think my team did inform me, we are at over 3 hours on your time at this point, which will be reflected in our daily totals. At this point, I think we're all ready for a break. We will come back to you, Mr. Ornbaum. You have an opportunity for cross-examination, but I think it's fair for everyone to have a break. I also want to think a little more about this site visit. So I'm going to call a 19-minute break. Let us all return at 4 p.m. and we will pick up for as much as we can get through in the last hour of our day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now
Right, so
Hmm.
I had taken my
All right, I'm back on. I will look to Ms. Cott. Are you ready for us to go back on the record?
All set, thank you.
Thank you. Welcome back. I did want to briefly address the site visit so that we don't run out of time, because I do have to issue a notice tomorrow. I didn't crack that nut, so to speak, but I think we have a couple issues. One is the start time, which is quite early. What I'm going to say in terms of noticing tomorrow is that we are going to issue a public notice that day one on September 9th will start at 10 a.m. at the TCCA office at Red Bluff. And then day two, September 10th, will begin at 9 a.m. at the Project Authority office. I'm also, so that we can get that notice out in terms of, because board members want to attend some or both of those parts of those days, and possibly all of those days. The stops we don't get to, we will try to schedule for October 22nd. I realize October 22nd is, there were complexities about what can be done then and the differences. We will do our best. The other piece of this is by the end of the day, September 4th, I would like any further suggestions you have about the itinerary for those days, given the parameters of the times we're starting and where we're starting. And then also I want a verification from either the attorneys in this case or Mr. King from you, or for those who are associated with these parties, a verification that if you are proposing these stops that you have obtained necessary access approvals, because it sounds like there's some confusion there, and I am very concerned about setting up a site visit where the public is crossing private property without approval of the property owner. That is not I want to avoid that at all costs, so to speak. That's not appropriate. So by the end of the day, September 4th, I'll be looking for that verification so we can finalize the itinerary. If we don't have access for September 9th and 10th, we can still look to obtaining access on October 22nd, or I'm open for another day. We have time later. This proceeding is not going to end tomorrow, as we all know. So we have time to look at another site visit day. I'm open to that. But I think we need some more time, it seems, for some pieces of this. I realize, and I'm sensitive to the tribes being willing to be available at certain times, and it sounds like some conversations have happened. And I don't want to, if they've agreed to certain things, I am concerned about changing the plan. I don't want to do that, and they're not here represented today, so we can't have a conversation about it, which is a little difficult. So let me know, for those of you who are communicating with the tribes, even if it means we need to do things a little backwards on September 10th, if we're trying to maintain meeting at an area where the tribes plan to attend and speak in the morning, we can try to do that. But just let me know. I know this is a lot of complexity to put together at the last moment, but I did have to make a decision for tomorrow as to what we notice as far as our meeting point, and then finalizing an itinerary next week. Are there questions? I'm going to look to the gallery here. Are there questions? I know this is a little bit vague, but are there questions I can try to answer, or other concerns that you want to raise related to the site visit? Or the field trip? Maybe I should call it a field trip. All right. We can talk about it again tomorrow if we need to. But I did want to get that information out because the notice will need to go out tomorrow. So it's going to be out of my hands as of the end of the day today. With that, I will turn back to our witnesses. We have completed, I believe, cross-examination by Mr. King, and I believe that leaves us with cross-examination by Mr. Ornbaum, if he has any. Mr. Ornbaum, are you here? And there you are. Do you have questions for these witnesses?
Yes,
Please,
I'd like
go
to
ahead.
make a clarification with you first, if I could, Ms. Kinsey.
Sure.
It was a couple hours ago. I'm just waiting for my turn here. In the discussion with the MOU discussion, I believe you made a request. I'm gonna make this clarification. You made a request of Alicia Forsyth and Angie Bizzoni. Your request was to understand the point of use or acres the stored water would be applied in Colusa County. Is that a short summary of what you requested?
I asked about well, I didn't request the information. I asked whether they were aware of where we could look for the information about the overlap of, or the acreage that is both within the proposed place of use and is also within Colusa County. Yes. And Mr. Ornbaum, it looks like you may have a slow connection.
So that's a very good request.
Mr. Ornbaum, if you can pause for a moment, it appears we have a bad connection. Can you turn off your camera?
How about now?
So we can do our audio.
Yeah, I'll try.
Thank you. Near the bottom, there should be a little
That help?
camera. Have a movie.
Yeah, I think I got it. I got it off. All right.
There we
Is
go.
it better?
So far so good. So let's try again. You asked about my question.
Okay. Yeah, so that would be very informative if we did understand the water that would be applied in Colusa County or outside of the Colusa County. And the question, I believe what I heard you say, well, you said could or would. Both of those are very different.
Mr. Ornbaum, I'm
answers.
sorry. Your audio quality is not going to work.
That have the
Mr. Ornbaum.
opportunity. Would mean they would actually apply the water. They probably.
I'm
Mr.
sorry, this is
Ornbaum.
the court reporter, Mr. Ornbaum. I'm not able to understand you.
Mr. Ornbaum, can you hear me?
Okay.
if you would
Yes, I
pause
can hear
talking for a moment, I
you.
think what we're going to need to do is to have you call in to Zoom. Our connection isn't good enough to hear you. Um, is
Okay.
this type of connection problem something that's normal for where you're at, or do you think it may resolve itself by the morning?
I can't hear.
I will look to my team.
We have bad service where I'm at in the town of Calusa.
Do you have a landline that you can use, a phone line?
How do I call in?
If so, I'll ask my team, can you please send Mr.
I
Ornbaum?
think if I just use this phone, it'll probably work.
Okay. Can you get email? Can I have my team email you instructions?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I will have them
Yes.
email you right now the appropriate number to call in to the Zoom conference. So to my team, if you would please do that, it should be in the hearing notice. And then to my team, if you would please let me know when the email has been sent, and I will tell Mr. Ornbaum to look for it. Thank you to everyone for your patience while we get this out. All right, Mr. Ornbaum, the email has been sent. I'm not sure what, hopefully it's helpful. I haven't seen it. Maybe Mr. Anderson, can you articulate, is it complicated?
I sent the call-in information that is on the first page of the hearing notice.
Which is a long list of numbers, right?
It is. I
Okay.
have not called in, so the first list of numbers is a 1 followed by an area code and then a 7-digit number.
Right.
After that, looks like there appears to be a 10-digit code. So I'm assuming it's going to prompt you for a code. And you would then enter that code. And I'm unsure what following that, there's a 6-digit number. I'm unsure if it prompts you for it.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Well, let's try it.
All right.
How far are we? Yeah, I can hear all your callers. conversations.
We're now we have a clear connection. Great. And if this doesn't work, we'll try again in the morning. And we can maybe, I think what's happening is anyway, we can figure out our call-in information maybe a little easier. But let's go ahead, Mr. Ornbaum, please. You're on mute.
That request for information would help quite a bit of understanding where this water will be applied. So I'm asking you, that was a request? It'll be.
It was not a direction. No, it was not making that as a direction to the site's authority. I think it's something that it sounds like it's something that could be calculated. Is there, maybe I'll ask Ms. Forsyth or Ms. Bizzoni, you may have answered this, but was there another panel or someone who worked on the place of use maps who might have an answer to this, who's one of the witnesses? Do you know?
Yes, I prepared and signed and submitted the place of use maps, and as Mr. Ornbaum was speaking, I did recall where we have provided these calculations by acreage, and they are actually part of the record. So if helpful, we could pull that up.
I don't think we'll see where Mr. Ornbaum goes, but can you just identify the exhibit and if you have a page, that's great, but at least the exhibit number?
AHO 304.
Okay.
Page, possibly. Table 2 beginning on page 6.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Mr. Ornbaum, there you have it. You may go find it. AHO 304, table 2, page 6.
Thank you. So I have a question for Bizzoni.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. In your answers or your statements with Mr. King on the topic of the MOU with Colusa County at this time, that correct?
I think I'm missing a few words.
Try it one more time, Mr. Ornbaum.
Your statement of that Colusa County does not
Mr. Ornbaum, I'm sorry.
have a water allocation at this time.
No, it's not working.
It's not working. Mr. Ornbaum, I'm sorry, the connection isn't good. We're going to have to pick up with this, I think, tomorrow morning. We'll try to verify a better call-in number, or are you able, tomorrow, are you able to access an area where you think the connection may be better?
I don't know. I'll try.
Okay.
I'll try. Okay.
So thank you, Mr. Ornbaum. We will turn back to you in this panel. What I'd like to do, since we're at 417, first of all, is there anyone else who I missed who I didn't miss anyone, did I, with respect to cross-examination we went through other than Mr. Ornbaum? And then what I propose to do, I'll turn to you, Mr. Hitchings or Mr. Ferguson or Ms. Chester. Do you have, I guess I'll say, I don't have additional questions on these topics for these witnesses. Do you have redirect for these witnesses?
Yes, we have a couple of redirect questions for Ms. Bizzoni.
So what I propose we do is we go ahead with those redirect questions, and then we'll turn to Mr. Ornbaum in the morning. If there's anything that comes up from that requires redirect, we'll finish the redirect and then go to recross. Does that sound okay to you, Ms. Chester?
Yes.
Okay, great. If you would please, you may begin your redirect.
Thank you. Ms. Mullen, can we please bring up CSPA 17? Can you please go to slide 2? Thank you. Ms. Bizzoni, do you recall a series of questions by Mr. Schutz regarding these two tables from AHO 48?
Yes.
And as shown here, for above normal and below normal years, do tables 3 and 4 on this slide show a reduction in VA flows?
These flows, table 4, excuse me. Table 4 shows a net change in delta outflow when considering the VAs without lower San Joaquin flows as well as sites diversions.
Thank you. We are done with that exhibit. Now, Ms. Bizzoni, do you recall a question from Mr. Ruiz regarding the time frame used for analysis and using calcium 2?
Yes.
And in preparing the water availability analysis for the project, did the authority perform any analysis other than modeling using calcium 2?
Yes, the authority developed what we refer to as the historical analysis and the face value analysis in addition to the calcium 2 analysis.
And did you rely on the historical analysis in reaching your conclusions regarding whether the project would deprive the counties of origin of water necessary for development?
Yes, I did.
And what was the time period for the historical analysis?
That the time period in the historical analysis is water years 2000 through 2021. I apologize, January 1, 2000 through September 30th, 2021, not water years.
And what did the results of the historical analysis show as is relevant to that conclusion?
Paragraph 24 at line 23 states that after considerations of proposed project diversions, there would be approximately 462,000 acre feet per year remaining in the Sacramento River.
Thank you. That's all we have.
Thank you. I think with that, since we still have time, we're moving right along. And Ms. Chester, just to clarify, that was all you have on redirect?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure I wasn't running away before you were done. Keeping in mind, we still have Mr. Ornbaum outstanding. I will look to the NGO, coordinating NGO parties. Do you have any, based on that limited redirect, do you have any recross questions for either witness?
I have one question.
Please go ahead.
Ms. Bizzoni, referring to the historical analysis that you just discussed for the time period January 1, 2000 to September 30, 2021, what was the tool or device that you used in order to make that analysis?
I believe the answer you are looking for is Excel. It's an Excel spreadsheet.
Yes, and is that identified as an exhibit?
I'm sure it is.
Angela, is it sites 2, 4, 3?
I believe it's, pardon me, I believe it's AHO 45. It's section 16 sites historical WAA tool. But Angela
Yes.
should confirm that.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
That is correct.
Yeah,
And
AHO 45, yeah.
yeah.
Great, thanks very much.
Thank you. Is that all you have, Mr. Schutz?
That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Busher or Mr. Stork, do you have any additional questions for recross? No.
I do not.
Mr. Reese, do you?
I do not.
Did I miss anyone? Does anyone have, based on that redirect, does anyone have additional recross for these witnesses? All right then. Well, with the, let's see, 423. So we have a couple options, which, well, we don't have a couple options. We have limited options. Doesn't seem to me to make sense unless you think otherwise, Sites Authority team, to start on panel 3. We've already had a long day. Do you have any other, Mr. Ferguson, you came off mute. Did you have a comment on that?
I agree.
Okay. Um, Mr. Ornbaum, we have the witnesses here, so it would be nice if we could get through this. Mr. Ornbaum, are you still on the line? Let me see. Yes.
Yeah,
Would you
I'm
like to
still
get
on the line.
one more try for the afternoon? Maybe the winds have shifted, or however that works. The stars have shifted.
Sure,
All right, give it a shot.
sure. The question is for Angela Pizzoni. On the topic, when you're, this is a couple hours ago, talking to Mr. King on the topic of the MOU with Colusa County. You stated Colusa County does.
I'm sorry, this is the court reporter. I'm having a hard time.
It's sorry, Mr. Ornbaum, that was third time, was not a charm.
This time.
I'm not an expert in anything, but sometimes I know with my iPhone that if I try to speak through the speaker option as opposed to just right up to my ear, sometimes it gets murky. So I don't know if Mr. Ornbaum is on his iPhone. I don't know if he has it on the speaker function, but maybe trying to take that off and speaking directly to the phone, that might help.
Mr. Ornbaum, were you on speakerphone?
Yes, I was on speaker.
Can you try it without being on speaker, please?
I'll try. I'm not sure how to do that. How about that? That better?
It sounds better so far. We'll try. We'll give it a attempt, please. Thank you, Mr. Soderlund, for that.
Yes. Let's try that.
Okay.
Okay. Now I'll just make it short. Does Colusa County have a water allocation at this time from their MOU with their point of origin water rights?
There are not storage allocations at this time. They have stated a desired participation in the project. However, there has been no formal offer of resolution or commitment to capacity interest and storage allocation.
So with that knowledge, my question is the MOU and the allocation open for negotiation with the Colusa County and the other participants in Sites Reservoir?
The MOU is a fully executed document. So I'll leave that there. It's been fully executed between the parties.
But in that execution, acre feet were not written down.
No, they have the MOU provides a priority of Funks Creek and Stone Corral Creek inflows to Colusa County in its storage allocation. There are not acre foot values of storage allocation discussed in the MOU.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Ornbaum. Thank you, Mr. Soderlund.
Yes, thanks for the help. Thanks for the help.
I'll keep that in our repertoire when if this comes up again. With that, I will turn to counsel for the authority. Do you have any, with those questions, do you have any additional recross for either witness?
No.
Thank you. So I think with that, we have completed the testimony from panel 2. Thank you, Ms. Pizzoni, and thank you, Ms. Forsyth. I know it was a long day. I really appreciate it. I believe where we'll pick up tomorrow morning is with panel 3, based on the time it took today and the substance of panel 3, I think it's fair to say we'll be going to panel 5 next, when we pick up next week because of the conflict with panel 4. So put that all on your radars as to how we're going. Is there anything else that we need to discuss before we break for the day and reconvene at 9 o'clock here tomorrow morning? All right, with that, I want to thank all of you. Thank you for your professionalism once again, day 2, and I will see you tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock.
Thank you.
Wait, are you there still there? May I get the names of the next panel? It just helps to kind of know who's going to be speaking.
Angela, this is Andy Hitchings. Yeah, we can send them to you.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's good. Maybe just send me that whole.